This video intends to show you how easy it is to use StatCrunch, which is embedded in MyMathLab, as a method of constructing confidence intervals for population proportions. So I'm going to go into the post 7.1 homework and just launch one of the problems sort of in the middle of the problem set and get into StatCrunch and show you how easy it is to construct confidence intervals for those population proportions. So I'll just pick like question 8 here out of 15, about halfway in. As you remember, there's a couple different ways that you can launch StatCrunch, and it depends on the screen. So if you don't see StatCrunch down here in those two options, when you click Get More Help, you'll see the StatCrunch option here. It's going to launch StatCrunch. And when you click on Stat, in the pull-down menu, you need to go to Proportion Stats for one sample and with the summary data. So I'm using the same examples that I did before for the worksheet, where I just told you how to do this with Microsoft Excel. So the first example, again, was on mobile boarding passes. And the first thing you'd want to do is click this little radio button, not for hypothesis testing, which we'll be talking about later, but this radio button for confidence intervals. And just leave it here on the standard walled method. So there were 60 out of 80 people who said they would use mobile boarding passes. So put 60 in for the number of successes, 80 for the number of observations. This is X and N, respectively, from the formulas we saw before. Then you just denote what the confidence level, which is actually still 95%, and you click the compute button, and you'll see that to the closest thousandth, this is 0.655, and this is 0.845, which are the upper and lower boundaries for the confidence interval on the worksheet. If I close that and move on to the next example from the worksheet, again going to proportion and stats in one sample for summary, the next example was the person who has the website who was curious what proportion of people clicked on the banner advertisement, and that was 34 out of 200 people, which was 17%. I'm going to click that button, and I did see that if I click the button, it didn't change those values, but sometimes I've seen that happen. I usually click the confidence button, interval button first. The confidence level for this confidence interval is actually 99%. So you have to change this to 0.99 in here. You simply push the compute button, and that's 0.102, and that's 0.238, which again are the lower and upper limits for the confidence interval that we saw on the worksheet. The you try it part of the worksheet was just talking about the administrators curious about what proportion of teachers had a master's degree. So again, we go from the stat pull-down menu to prop stats to one sample to summary. And there were 55 out of 100 of the surveyed teachers that said they had a master's degree. And the confidence level that we wanted here for this was 95%, which is the default. So when I push compute, you'll notice this is 0.452 and this is 0.645. No, sorry, 0.648. And those, again, are the lower and upper limits for the confidence interval that you see on the worksheet key. Lastly, I'm going to use it for the fourth example, where it was what proportion of people would support raising the minimum wage, and that was a confidence interval with a confidence level of only 90%. So I'll change that to 0.90, and of the 800 people, 568 people said that they would support raising the minimum wage. And when we compute the lower and upper limits, we see 0.683. Actually, this would rank to 0.684 up to 0.736, which again matches the values when we did it by hand and with the graphing calculator and as well with Excel. So pretty easy to also use StatCrunch to produce population proportion confidence intervals.